Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and I'm delighted to be welcoming someone who I like very much because the way he explains to his friends and clients issues that pertain to day-to-day life as well as in the realm of immigration. And there's one question that keeps puzzling me relates to lottery system in the legal corridor, and that is H-1B lottery. So, is it law or luck? We have the pleasure of welcoming David Nachman to our program, and also joining him, Ludka, both of them. Welcome, namaste.
Namaste. Thank you
Such a
so much for
pleasure.
having us.
So we are always grappling with different kind of weather. Recently, you had snow, and that changes the scenario and your mood also. But how is the mood when you do what is supposed to be done for your clients, but because of the lottery system, all that goes down the drain in a way because he couldn't succeed in getting the H-1B visa. Talk to me about H-1B visa and this lottery system, please, David.
Thank you so much first of all, thank you so much for the kind words, Ashok. You and I have been working together for, God, it's what now, 15 years. Unbelievable, right? How time flies. But it's so great how you're able to bring all this excellent information to the community, and I truly respect you for that. And this is a mystery to us too, as immigration lawyers. We cannot understand why the hiring of professional and specialty occupation workers in the United States is driven by a lottery or driven by something which is luck. Because shouldn't this be something that's driven by the free market and by supply and demand? And if there is a demand for highly skilled workers, aren't we putting ourselves, the United States, at a competitive disadvantage by setting this up as a lottery system where individuals who have master's degrees from U.S. institutions get 20,000 H-1Bs on a fiscal year basis, and individuals with the equivalence of a U.S. baccalaureate degree, only 65,000 get H-1B visas. And this is a very timely question, Ashok, and I'm so glad that you asked it now because we're just on the cusp of the filing of the new H-1B registration for 2024. It's the 2024 H-1B season, and that's going to start on March 1st, and it's going to run until March 17th. So we're in the throngs of preparing employers right now to get their H-1B registration documents together for their prospective H-1B employees. And it's not great news that we have to tell employers that it's all subject to chance. It's a crazy system.
So allow me to bring in Ludka. Was there always this H-1B lottery system the way it exists today? And also, I understand they have different number of H-1B visas allocated to different countries. So how that is determined, and talk to me specifically from the point of view of Indian aspiring H-1B visa aspirants.
Thank you, Ashok. It's a good question, and it doesn't really matter what country you're from. So it's just random. That's why it's called a random lottery. So the only difference is if you have a U.S. master's degree and higher, you have a better chance because there are additional 20,000 H-1Bs per year. For bachelor's level, there are only 65,000. Just to give you an idea, past season there were 483,000 H-1B registrations. So you can do the math that the odds are not great. Again, it doesn't matter what country the individual is from. It doesn't matter what kind of degree do they have, and it doesn't matter what position, whether it's a very important position or whether it's something that U.S. government needs. It doesn't really matter. It's just pure luck, and it's very important to have alternatives because it may not happen. So, right now we are preparing for H-1B registration, but by April 1st, we know who was selected. And it's important to have backup plan.
And Ashokji, I
So
think it's really important for us to point out, and Ludka, I'm going to ask you actually to chime in on this, is that I've noticed that the skill sets of the individuals who are doing H-1Bs have gotten dramatically better over the years. And I'm looking at now, let's say years ago, I used to look at a 2-page resume. Now for some of these folks who are quote unquote highly skilled workers, I'm looking at 5 to 50-page resumes. I mean, it's just incredible. And these folks are commanding tremendous salaries for the very specialized skill sets that they possess. And think about it is that so given what, and Ludka obviously made reference to what are the odds. Well, the odds are, if you're entering the lottery in the bachelor's or its equivalent, your odds are 1 in 3. And if you enter in the masters, it's 1 in 1.3. So your odds are better. But what's interesting is that what if you have these highly, these highly desired skill sets? These people are being blocked out, and that's really bad, because what it does is it places the United States at a competitive disadvantage compared to the worldwide brain drain.
And Ashok, just going back to your question, I remember the times when we didn't have the lottery, and that was awesome because we were able to do H-1Bs all year round because demand wasn't such high. So over the years, it's more and more. In fact, I believe it was in the past 10 or 15 years, every year we have more H-1B applicants because everyone is nervous. So students on OPT that normally would have 3 years of a work permit, they start applying for H-1B right away because they're scared that they're not going to make it. But I remember around 2007, 2006, there was no lottery. We were just filing H-1B petitions for employers throughout the year.
And
so
I'm
yeah
going to just say one thing. I go back quite a ways. So I've been doing this for 35 years, and I remember when there was no quota at all. So back in 1990, when I was doing H-1Bs, there was absolutely no quota whatsoever. The quota came in under IMACT 90, which was the law in 1990 that placed that 65,000 cap on the H-1Bs. And that was done because that law also changed the non-immigrant visa classifications and gave us the O and the P and the Q and the R, which we didn't have, until 1990. So 1990,
yeah
1991. I'm sorry, go ahead.
so yeah, no problem. I'm just thinking from both point of view, from US's point of view as well as those from India or other countries, and especially from India when they're dreaming to be in states. There are some people who come as student visa holders, and in their mind, because they're investing so much in the education, they think that they'll get H-1B visa. So there should be something clear to them before building their dreams with the hope of getting H-1B visa. And what if you take a loan, study there, assuming that you will get it? That is one. What are the basic ballpoint suggestions or advice that you would have for those H-1B visa aspirants looking at their future coming from India to America? Both of you kindly share.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to point out, and I think that I'm going to pre-echo what Ludka is going to say, and that is that really what this requires is a full-blown analysis of every case, because H-1B is not the only way for individuals to go. So what we usually do is we invite the opportunity to review an individual's full-blown resume and to try to come up with options. And I think Ludka alluded to it before, is that there might be options beyond the H-1B. So for example, the O might be an opportunity. Maybe if the individual is not from India, the E might be an opportunity. So there are other non-immigrant visa classifications that might be available. So, the H-1B does serve a particular purpose. And obviously for our Chinese and our Indian clients, the H-1B is a very durable long-term work permit because we're able to take advantage of additional extensions. But I'm going to let Ludka, and I'm so sorry because
you mentioned the 10 pages or 50 pages resume, and we do see it. It's incredible that people, have great resumes and credentials. So sometimes we wouldn't even bother with the H-1B. So that would definitely be an O1 because there is no lottery, there is no deadline. So if the individual qualifies for an O1, it may be a better way to go because you don't have to stress about the H-1B lottery. So the key is just to think about options and not to rely on the H-1B. Of course, there could be H-1B that is cap exempt. Then the individuals don't have to worry. So we have a lot of Indian nationals and other nationals that want to work in academia. So they want to stay and work at the U.S. university, college. That would be no issue. There is no lottery at all. They can apply for H-1B at any time.
Exactly. And it's so important to remind students, who are graduating that going to work in academia is a wonderful way to start out. And again, that's a cap exempt H-1B, so we can do H-1Bs year round. And, we don't have to worry about this lottery system for them.
So, in the given circumstances that we have at the moment, there are many challenges for aspiring H-1B visa holders, and then probably we'll also talk about those who are on H-1B visa. What is their future in terms of getting the permanent residency? But let's stay towards this side, uh, and if we look at the overall picture, H-1B category is a specialized visa as to my understanding. So this is to meet the kind of specialized demand for workers in United States. So this lottery system, does it hurt America overall in terms of realizing its growth potential somewhere? How you look at it, David?
It's a great question, Ashok. And since I've been doing H-1Bs, believe that the system that's presently in place does hurt the United States. It hurts us dramatically because the individuals that we do H-1Bs for, they go on to become leaders in groups and create jobs for U.S. workers. And the big problem that we find is that the anti-immigration sentiment oftentimes creeps into this issue, and we hear about it on the media that the H-1Bs are taking jobs away from U.S. workers. But that's not in fact the case. If in fact, we find exactly the opposite. If anything, these individuals are leaders. These individuals continue to promote the entrepreneurial spirit that is unfortunately on the downswing here in the United States. It's not on the upswing. And these folks who come over, on these H-1Bs are leaders, build jobs for U.S. workers, and are an incredible contribution here in the United States. I mean, if you take a look at the statistics, you'll see that the entrepreneurs, most of the entrepreneurs are foreign nationals. Who are in charge of startup companies or companies that are already in existence.
And it's very frustrating. We speak to different companies on a daily basis when the companies, presidents of HRs will tell us that they're trying to hire someone with specialized knowledge. They cannot find the talent in the US, but they just cannot bring them because of visa restrictions. It's very frustrating. So that's really our job to find creative way to bring them over on a different type of visa. But it's definitely frustrating and it's hard to explain to US companies why they cannot hire the talent, especially if they cannot find anyone in the US.
And
And let me ask
oftentimes,
you, David. Yeah,
yeah, I was going to say,
sorry.
oftentimes, especially for significant companies, and I think Ludka would agree, is that oftentimes we have to give them the bad news if the individual has not won or not been lucky in the H-1B lottery, is that they have to put their strategic growth plans on hold and they have to put them on ice for a year and wait for another cycle, hopefully winning in another cycle, and then they can get this, whatever the strategic plan is, they can get it started. But we don't like to give bad news to businesses that are attempting to grow and to expand in the United States.
So I wanted to ask you, there are situations when they don't go to expert attorneys, they try to do things on their own. And I have seen cases through newspapers where people get caught in a trap. So this company is not actually the kind of company which should have offered H-1B, because they cannot sustain their position with valid visa for the required time, etc. So my question is, what are the tips that you may extend for the aspiring H-1B visa holders to be careful so that they don't get caught in unpleasant situations?
I'm so glad, Ashok, that you're bringing it up because we see it every day, and it's very sad because usually who suffers is the foreign national. They get caught up. I recently had a client who ended up with a fraud inadmissibility, placed in deportation proceedings because of the company. So the company was just doing fraudulent H-1B registrations. So the advice that I would give to our viewers is that it has to be bona fide job offer. And if it sounds too good to be true, you should probably just review the company and make sure that it's a real company, real job opportunity, because it will always hurt the foreign national at the end. And it's very sad.
I think that over the years, Ashok, the H-1B process has become extremely complex, and there are many nuances to preparing H-1Bs. For example, one of the things that we are aware of is this Simeo Systems case, which has to do with an individual who might be moving from one place to another. So there are such a number of nuances. So it's definitely advisable, at least at this point in time, I believe, for folks to be using a qualified immigration lawyer to be putting together these H-1B petitions, just so that they don't put themselves at risk. And what ends up happening is that potentially there are investigations that are being done by USCIS, by Immigration Customs Enforcement, by the U.S. Department of Labor, all of which administrative agencies, touch and concern this H-1B world. So, by not doing it correctly, they open up themselves to potential exposure.
So allow me also to seek your help in understanding for our viewers. Once you come to America on H-1B visa, then in order for you to have the valid visa and to follow the rules and regulations of United States of America, your company also needs to follow certain procedures, etc., which includes the amount of salary which is promised, that is being given. And there I see a lot of people finding themselves in a very frustrating position. Sometimes it's a small company, they don't issue the specified amount which they promise, etc. So what happens in such situations, and how the one who is in a vulnerable position because he doesn't have strength, financial strength, etc., a new country, and is there anything that can help them, any information that can empower such people in facing these situations?
Yeah, no, I think that that's a good point. And obviously, with every law, as you know, there are always going to be people who are the malfeasors, people who don't follow the rules and try to cut corners. Again, going back to what I said before, is that there are investigations being done by various administrative agencies that try to be the checks and balances to keep to keep the law in place, to make sure that people are following the rules. I think that what we tend to find, Ludka and I sometimes find, is that when an individual goes back to the U.S. Department of State for a new visa stamping at the U.S. consulate abroad, then they want to see paychecks, and they want to make sure that the individual is actually being paid. Number one, but number two is that they are actually being paid the federally mandated prevailing wage, which the employer has to make a representation that they are doing on the labor condition application, which is the precursor to the H-1B filing.
And also during the extension, Ashok, when the employer files an H-1B extension, it's really important to show evidence that the person is maintaining the H-1B status. and that is by submitting pay stubs. So the government will be checking, has that individual been paid the proper prevailing wage throughout the 3 years? They may ask for W-2. So just having the H-1B, it's not everything. It's important to maintain it. Also, I think David pointed out about moving. So if the individual's location, place of employment has changed, for example, somebody's moving from Florida to New York, H-1B amendment needs to be filed, because once the H-1B extension is filed in 3 years, it will all come up, and the government may determine that the person did not maintain proper H-1B.
And one of the
So
things
there is
that
another.
one of the things that Ludka and I always point out to an employer is that you don't have to necessarily do a full-time H-1B, right, Ludka? So
Correct.
possibly an employer could do a part-time H-1B. If the wage is too onerous, then the employer maybe does a part-time H-1B, which is fine. It doesn't have to be a full-time H-1B.
Okay,
But you,
so quick question: this part-time H-1B, will it also have to be through this lottery system, or it has a separate way?
yes, Ashok. So it's the same lottery, and it could be for part time. So oftentimes people think that if you have full time employment, you have a better chance. It doesn't really matter. So if someone is offered part time position, it's totally fine. It will go through the lottery. But I want to point out that, for example, if somebody has full time H-1B employment, then the employer decides, I don't have enough work for you, I'm going to switch you over to part time. That's a no-no. The employer would first have to file H-1B amendment to let the government know that we are switching them to part-time, and only then it may work. So the employer is not at liberty just to cut the hours, as we talked about before. But yeah,
So,
part-time H-1B is
yeah.
fine.
So, what are the chances of someone coming on full-time H-1B visa, and now is an employer feels that I can only afford the part-time? Will that get approved or not? I mean, what are the chances there?
I have to say, in all my years, I've never had an issue. So, and it happens all the time.
Same. Yeah.
For example, we may have an individual that will say, you know what, I just want to work part time because I got second offer from the university, so I want to teach, and I'm getting second H-1B, which is called concurrent H-1B. We see it all the time. So I've never seen that the government would question, going from full time to part time, even as little as 5 hours per week.
And
So,
also,
David,
Chuck,
yeah,
I'd like to just, while we're on part-time
sure, please.
H-1Bs, I also want to point out that it's an excellent mechanism for, especially now where we're hearing about a lot of layoffs, right? We're hearing a lot of layoffs in the information technologies field. Getting a
Yes.
concurrent part-time H-1B is a wonderful way to preserve your status. So if you get a concurrent H-1B in place, and let's say you get laid off from your full-time job, let's say with Google or Amazon or Meta, then you don't have to worry because you can fall back on that part-time, let's say concurrent H-1B that you have in place, and that can hold you up until you can find another job. So that's a nice mechanism that Ludka and I use to be able to make people sleep well at night, so to speak.
So, talking about having good night's sleep is to avoid the possibility of any stress situation or having unfavorable possible result. So, is there any way for Indian immigrants to sort of avoid this H-1B lottery visa process altogether? Is there something like which is parallel to this? And David, share your thoughts on that.
Well, one of the things that we always look at, as Luca pointed out, is that we always look to see whether the individual has a resume that bears out a potential O visa. So that's one opportunity. Also, if one of our let's say one of our clients who's, let's say, born in India has taken up citizenship in another country, carries an Australian passport or a passport from
Canada.
Canada, right? Then that gives us an opportunity. It opens the door to a TN. If it's Canada, it opens the door, if they're from Australia, to an E3, which is a professional worker from Australia. So yeah, I mean, we explore other options, and sometimes we do that before the H-1B lottery if it's well in advance. Sometimes we do it if the individual tries in the lottery to get the H-1B and they're unsuccessful, then we circle back around and propose that as a form.
Another important alternative that we see quite a lot with our Indian clients is if the company already has a company abroad, for example, in India, they would transfer them for 1 full year and bring them back on L1A or L1B. So I see a lot of L1s being used by our clients. Or, they go back, they may have family business, they work for 1 full year, and they come to the United States to open up a new office. Because India doesn't have E2 investor visa, we see a lot of L1s for our Indian clients.
So talking about this H-1B lottery, and right now this is very exciting phase. What? How do you see? I mean, we keep reading that there are so many Indian professionals coming to America, and most of the visa H-1B lottery visa gets diverted towards Indian immigrants. Is that true? And overall, how do you see this situation? You also have an office now in Mumbai, I believe, in addition to having one in St. Florida. I mean, at certain places, but India is the place.
Right.
Ashok, I just read a statistic. There was an article about statistics in 2020, 2021, and 22 for the approval rate of the H-1Bs that suggests that 75% of the H-1Bs are held by Indian nationals. That's a lot.
And then, yeah. So I'll quickly mention another series of stories which are coming. Those who were on H-1B visa, and as you mentioned, these tech companies with thousands of layoffs. So they're in a very bad situation. Yet hope continues to drive people to look for opportunities. So even though there are some people who face hardships, still uh, there is strength to overcome and to see the positive possibilities. So I think you help people in sustaining their dreams. If we quickly look towards H-1B visa, moving towards green card.
Well, so one of the things that obviously individuals are interested, many individuals, not all individuals, are interested in obviously moving from the H-1B to the green card. The H-1B is a dual intent classification as opposed to international students, which Ludka alluded to before. Those are pure non-immigrants. So the H-1B provides a much better platform for moving to the green card. And the green card you can move to the green card through the perm labor certification process, where the employer has to show that there are no able, willing, and qualified U.S. workers. The problem, and you can go through a pre-certified classification, which obviously lends itself to individuals who have resumes that are just tremendous, where you have individuals who have scholarly contributions and patents and trademarks and all kinds of intellectual property. But I think one of the things that at least with pursuing the green card, is that you have these priority date backlogs, which apply to Indian citizens, unfortunately. And we're obviously trying to deal with that legislatively. But in the meantime, Ludka and I have to find creative methodologies to keep the individual in the United States. And oftentimes that is using the H-1B and getting 3-year additional incremental extensions on that H-1B until the individual gets the green card.
So overall, we are almost near the concluding part of our conversation. Somehow, all good things come to an end. It's such an engaging conversation with both of you. So as we wind up, both of you, top 3 points that you would like any H-1B aspiring visa candidate to keep in mind. Starting with you, Ludka.
Plan ahead. That's my tip number one. Plan ahead and plan your alternatives, because H-1B obviously may not happen.
Uh, yeah.
And I would say, Ludka and I speak for Ludka when I say this, and probably every other lawyer in our firm, we are not just dealing with getting highly skilled workers here. We are opening the doors here in the United States to ensure that we here in the States can take advantage of the worldwide brain drain. We know that we're competing with other countries like Canada, with the UK, with Ireland, with Australia, who are all opening their doors to these highly skilled workers. So it's our feeling that if we can find creative methodologies to allow these individuals to come here and stay and add value, then we've done our job.
Wonderful. I really appreciate, and I think the passion with which you serve and make the required bridge using legal sort of parameters, but also with your enthusiasm, helping them look at the positive side. And this lottery system has its own, I don't know what kind of advantages, but even in disadvantageous situations, you figure out a way to move forward. So, lots of good wishes. May you have continued success in helping your clients, and especially Indian immigrants find
Thank
their
you.
way to realize their dreams.
Thank you, Ashok.
Thank you very much. So,
Thank you
thanking
so much for having us.
I appreciate that. David and Ludka, thank you very much joining with lots of good wishes. Thanking all of you for joining us. This is Ashok Vyas. Namaste.